Welcome to my PowerPoint on TDX's resistances. Resistances reduce damage onto certain enemies indicated by a percentage, usually located above an enemy's health bar. There are a total of 8 in the game currently, being bullet, fire, explosive, laser, gold, ice, melee, and collision. It's quite a handful. Counters include different damage types or upgrades that ignore resistances. An example being a Top Hat Juggernaut, where it has bullet damage, but it ignores it on the final upgrade. Resistances done right can be an effective tool to keep gameplay interactive. Example being counterplay. So if there was an enemy with, say, 80 to like 100% bullet damage resistance, then you would have to use another tower that does a different type of damage, or something that just completely ignores it, like I said in the first slide. If done wrong, however, can be a tedious addition to play against. Sometimes it could feel like a quota or like a checklist. Like if there's too many enemies that have just a jumble of random resistances, it can be annoying at times to try to play against that. On the opposite side of that, though, there's a lot of potential if done right. For example, waves that are centered around resistances. Main example being wave 31 in the old expert, where they would send out a lot of revived juggernauts with both bullet and explosive resistance. If you didn't have the towers at the time to deal with that, then it could be very threatening, even more threatening than the wave before that, which was the mini boss wave, the predator wave, which is very interesting that by adding just a couple of resistances onto certain enemies, it could be a very dangerous wave in comparison to even a mini boss wave. And it doesn't stop there. There's also the addition of negative resistances, which can benefit the player if they use a specific damage type that they are negatively resistant by. For example, this guy right here, he was first showcased in Xmas 2024 Part 1. He has -5 resistance, which means instead of just using any other damage type to take care of him, it is incentivized to use fire damage type, which would help you deal with these guys. And I think this further emphasizes the importance of resistances. But that is the extent we see the TDX dev team implement such a thing, which has led to them which has led to resistances as a whole to be devalued over the years. For number one, it hasn't been expanded upon past that, right? Even now we see in the elite rework on wave funnily enough, on wave 31 on the elite rework, they would send out a bunch of revived towers, right? Kind of like paying respects to like the old wave 31 in expert, when they would send out the revived juggernauts. They just sent out like a jumble of a bunch of random revived towers, and they all had their respective resistances, and some of them were pretty cool, like the slammer one. However, it kind of just feels like they're sticking with what works, and they're not really trying anything different. Like they're just adding more revived towers, and only on that wave too. Like that is the only way we see the revived slammer, the revived railgunners, and it's kind of, I feel like it's a bit of a waste, right? They're not really expanding upon it that well. And another thing is that there are way too many resistances. At the beginning of the video, I said there was a total of 8 when there used to be a total of 5. And while having more resistances could be good, right, if we add more damage types, the way they do it now, it sort of feels like a band-aid fix to like a bigger problem. Like, for example, the melee resistance was kind of to put the slammer in its place, right? Like it was a little too strong, and I feel like the implementation of it was kind of to indirectly nerf the slammer, as indicated by the hammer icon. But I don't think it it adds to the overall impact that resistances used to have. It's just, oh, this is just here to counter this tower. And then if we take it a step further with the golden resistance, right, that is to indirectly nerf all the golden towers, right? If you know, if these towers are too strong and we can't really find a way to balance it, they kind of just have this golden resistance there, right, to kind of put these towers in line. And I feel like that kind of devalues what resistances are supposed to be, right? In the beginning, right, they're supposed to just be there to, you know, incentivize counterplay. You use different towers, but now it's just like, oh, okay, you just can't use this tower at all. And at the very end, we have the rise of ignore resistances. And at the beginning, only a very select few towers had this, like the Juggernaut, for example, at the beginning. He has the ignore resistance at his top path, and the way that they balanced it was that it didn't have stealth detection. The damage wasn't as great as the bottom path. It kind of made sense, but now we see more and more towers kind of have this ignore resistance, like XWM. That tower in itself is already really strong, and with the additional fact that it has the ignore resistances, it kind of just makes the whole resistance thing doesn't really seem as impactful anymore, which kind of sucks. And now okay, the importance of resistances, right? It's a very straightforward layer of gameplay, right? That adds a very strong foundation to the game, and the way it does that is it elevates the other features, right? So for example, the flying enemies or stealthed enemies, they could then have an additional resistance on them, which adds to counterplay. And I just feel like it's one of the core pillars that TDX needs to have to really elevate their game as a whole, right? Like, you can add all these features, but at the end of the day, this is like one of like the more like primitive like tower defense features that already makes the game good. You know, if TDX can just go back and just like implement this like in a better way and not kind of just have it as like a band-aid fix for some strong towers, or kind of just give it to everyone like as like a quota, then I feel like it could really do some good. I think that I'm kind of blabbling here. Well, the moral of the story is I like resistances. They're very simple. They're very effective piece of gameplay that TDX had, and should honestly go back and re-implement them like as they did before, and just make them scary again. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for thank you for tuning in my presentation. Bye. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I nominate Fractured, Epic Zill, Kia, 10 Letters, Null, Vega Blocks, and Rogue Ordinary to also make a TDX theme slideshow video. Okay, bye.